So first thing was to create a folder for you to start your script, right? For you to create your script. Do freestyle. All right, so we would create a folder, correct? We would name our script name, let's say, for example, right? We would open it, and now we wanted to make it so that it's organized, especially if it's a big project, right? So we would organize it by call it client and server if we need one, and shared if you need one. You don't have to. You can name it whatever you want as long these names are in the FX manifest. And now here we're going to create a file. We call it FX manifest.lua. It needs to have this name, right? Every script must have a FX manifest in order to CFX detected, right? And no, only English, sorry. Alright, so we have our folder, right? And now we would create a file. You can call it anything. You can say main .lua or .js if you code in JavaScript. But .lua.jf, right? You can create more files if you want. Right now we only need one. Server, same thing. Create one, you can call it main as well. Lua. Right. And shared, let's say you want a config file, right? That is shared between client and server, right? Because what's in the server files you can access from the client. But if you have a file that is a shared file, then the server and the client can use the same functions, right? So we're gonna do shared to an extent. Shared, or we can do here config, right? Because it's a standard thing. Config.lua, right? And basically we have everything. Now we would open this file, right? TFX manifest. You see it's empty. And we would type, the first thing is we need an FX version, right? FX version, Cerulean. There are more, but what you need to use is Cerulean, right? And then in here you need to specify the game, which is RDR3. If it's GTA 5, you can put GTA 5. If it's both, you can put games, and you can do this table and do it like this, right? And it supports both games. But in this case, we only need RDR3. And now, standard RedM scripts must have a warning. RDR3 warning. I forgot what was the name for it. So let's see here. Let's just get it here. You can basically copy from any other script. You will see that you have. We can copy from this. Oops, that is not our. Let's go here. Okay, something wrong with this Visual Studio. It's now opening. Okay, we have it here. I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna remove this, right? must have this message, right? And then we can name our resource, name random example resource, that's fine, a description, and you can add a version, and you can specify Lua 54. Yes, this will enable the new features that CFX provides and Lua, right, when you do this. And that's pretty much all you need here, right, from this. But now we need to specify our resources name, right? So we have a shared server and client. So let's say client script. If it's just one, you can do script or scripts, and you just put an array. Yes. So you can put other scripts like this. So if config is only for the client file, you can do like this. So in this case, we don't. So the folder is client, and we named it main.lua, right? And before that, we will do the shared script, shared main.lua. And then we'll do the server script server, right? So, and in our shared, we did config.lua, and that's all you need to make sure that your script will start. Well, admin is for all the scripts. Yes, it's a different version. There are some differences. Yes, if you use admin, you cannot use HTTPS, but if you use Cerulean, you can use HTTPS. Right? They are different. For example, there's one of them. There are more reasons. But yeah, you should use Cerulean. I know a lot of scripts has, but I've been trying to change all of the Vorp ones to use the new ones. Right. So I'm going to close this because you see that we have a lot of undefined global variable names here. And you're also seeing that when I'm trying to, let's say, do the shared, you see that you can see this transparent thing here doing it for me. All I have to do is just press tab, right? We're going to go over this feature, right? When we get to the Visual Studio extensions, we're going to go to this feature. Here we need just game. Right, so I'm just gonna close this because this was just to create it, and now to open it, you're gonna close this one here. You're gonna go to Visual Studio. You're gonna close this, and we're gonna open the folder, right? Because the Visual Studio code extensions will only work if you work within your workspace. Right? If you just open a file, they're not going to work. So we gotta open a folder here. And what did we named it? Script name was this one. Okay. So now we have it like this, right? So we can search things and see all the files, right? You see now you don't have an undefined global. You don't have any errors here now, right? But that is because I have my extensions enabled, right? But anyhow, we've done the structure folder, right, that we need for our shared files or translation server files and client files, right? And we have our FX manifest. We have our version, description, name. For now, that's all we need. I think it's safe to say I am recording. Yeah. So probably yes. Right, so we have all the structure, right? Then all we need to do to make sure that this script works is just to go to your server.cfg and put ensure the script name, the folder name, and this will start. So let's go over the extensions because they play a crucial part. And I'm going to disable them, the ones I use, so that we can see why and what do they do. Right, so I'm going to disable this one. And I'm going to disable this one. I'm going to disable this one. And I'm going to disable Vorp. Right? Those are the three most important extensions. We're going to restart this. Right. As you can see, this is not blue anymore. Right? It's not blue anymore. So let's just go over here to client, right? So I could just type here local name equals Louis, let's say local last name equals Diaz, right? You see this is local is in purple, the name is white, and then we have the our string, right? You can do local age equals 13, right? So one of the things that we should install is this extension right here. This Lua language server provides various language features for Lua to make development easier and faster. This will provide you with annotations, which we're going to go over, dynamic type checking, syntax checking, support for libraries, and other things that you can read here. So we are going to enable it. It is now enabled. And now you can see that the colors changed, right? You can see that the colors changed. But these ones are grayed out. That means they're not being used. So just by activating this extension, we can see which variables are being used and which ones are not. Let's say here, if age equals 13, then end. You see that now age is highlighted. That means it's being used. And this helps a lot, right? When you go over your code and say, why is this grayed out? Oh, okay, so it's not being used. So we can just delete it. Or we're going to find out why is it not being used, right? So this part makes sense, right? The config is shared, is available in client and in server, yes. But the main client is not available in config. Client is client, server is server, and shared is both, right? Right, but right here we can see there is great help. And now let's create here, let's put here a comma. You see, it's telling us that there is an error, right? This is another advantage of this extension. You can see where the errors are. You can see that there is an error that is not supported in Lua. So we delete it, we don't have an error anymore, right? Let's put here no, 13, right? Let's put here, let's say other things that we can do is, for example, functions, right? So if you go here and do function, text equals n, right? Same thing happens here if we do a local function. You see, it's grayed out. It's not being used unless I do this. Text. Now it's highlighted. Now it means it's being used, right? If we move this below here, you see now it tells you as well that this function doesn't exist as well. This is all because of this extension. It tells you that this function doesn't exist, so something is wrong, right? If we put a local function in here, you see that it's grayed out and text doesn't exist, and we will have an error when we run this script, right? Because it's a local function. It is only available from this line downwards, right? Anything upwards, it's not accessible, right? Unless we make it a global function. If we make it a global function, then there isn't an error anymore, right? But we want to avoid global pollution, right? So if we can, we need to make it global locals as much as we can, right? And then you would do this, right? So let's say here I want to put name. Just by putting this name here, this function expects a maximum of 0 arguments, but instead it's receiving 1. This telling us that this function doesn't require any parameters, right? So I can just do this, right? And if I go here and if I put a name, you see now it's gone, right? We could remember that name is a local variable, but is above this function, so it will be available inside of this function. And that's why you have these 3 dots in here, as you can see them. That means that name already exists. So we could do something like name1, for example, and now it's fine. We would just have to print name1, and now we'll print this name that we passed on this function, right? So as you can see, by this just having this extension enable, we can see errors that we are making, functions they are not declared, variables that are not declared, and where do we made a mistake, like errors. So it's a very useful again, extension. Now we can also do annotations, right? So let's say here param, let's say name, and let's say here it's a string, right? We can tell this function here that param this name1 is a string. So when we go over this function here with our cursor, you can see that name1 is a string. If I remove this, you have no information about what it is, right? But by putting an annotation, we know that this parameter needs to be a string, right? So let's say if we put here age, you see what it does? By having this here saying that this function only accepts a string, the extension will tell you cannot use a string here because you cannot use an integer here because this function accepts a string. If we remove this, we would have no clue, and then we could get an error, right? And that's why annotations are powerful to help you as well do your code, you know. Right. Like I said, you need to code in your workspace. If you're not in your workspace, they won't work. You see that I open the folder. I open the folder instead of the file. And if you have this extension, you need to have this exact extension, right? Lua, which you can find it in here in Vorp. And where is it? Right here. You can find it in here, marketplace, the framework, and the Lua extension right here. So you can download this and it will help you. Even to do config files, this is really good. You can see where you made the errors, etc. Right. And if we put here name, we don't have an error anymore. This is a string. And as you can see, these two here are not being used. That's why they're grayed out. And that's why this is very nice. It helps you a lot when you code, right? So you went over the annotations, why you need it, and what does it do, right? This is just some of the things uh, that you will that you will that you will use when you make a script. You need those things. Now, if we go here to another extension, which is this one here, CFX Lua 5M and RedM IntelliSense support. This is for natives, and what CFX has like libraries, anything that you can use within the runtime, right? When you make a script, when you run a script through the framework. We're going to enable it here, right? Now we have it enabled, but you don't see anything, right? But let's say I need a native. Right now, what you do is you go to the native website, and let's say I need to get player name, right? This is a is this a client? Yeah, it exists in both, right? Get player name. So what would we do? We would have to copy this, right? This native, so that we can use it in here. So we would have to go back and forward to just to get natives that we need, right? Now, if you have this extension, all you need to do is to start typing it, and it will show you the options that you could use. So let's say I want to use get player. You see a lot of options now. Now you have a lot of options here, and you can see get player name, and it will do it for you, right? And it tells you this function requires one argument, but instead of receiving two. This is because the extension has a file. If you hover over it, you can go to the file and you can see that it has annotations, and that's why it's telling you it needs a parameter. What we need here is a player ID, and then we will have a print. You see there's an error because we're missing a bracket, and this would print your Steam name, right? So if you hover over it, if you go over this function, you can see this information here, right? That means this is part of the player natives. It's a client native, and you can see the native documentation. You can click this, and it will take you to the link. And you can see here that the player is the parameter needs to be an integer, right? This is what this extension does, is that you can start typing natives, and you will have all of these options here, which you can just do this, you know. So let's say here entity proofs. Now you go over it and you see it needs an entity, an integer, and a special flag, right? So you would type player pet ID, let's say to 2, and the true, right? The special flag, which it says is a boolean. If I put here 1, you will see that it gets you a warning telling you it cannot be an integer because it's a boolean needed. So you switch it to true. Same thing here. If you put a string here, it tells you you cannot do this because it is an integer. Say you put an integer, right? So as you can see, both working at the same time, and it really helps you. You don't have to go as much as to the native's website as much, right? And it provides intelligence, documentation, and everything else. Another good feature about the Lua extension is that if you go over it and you press Alt, you see how it gets blue? This will take you where this function is defined, right? So if I go over here and if I press text, it takes me right here when I need it to be. So let's say that this function here is in another file, right? And I'll do this, and it will take me there. So I don't have to go and look for this function. I can just go over it, click Alt, left Alt, and it takes you right to it. Like this one is this native is defined in this extension in the file, and if I click on it, you see it took me to the file. This is where it's defined. So that's another powerful thing to speed up your process, right? Your programming. Right. And everybody's understanding what I'm saying, correct? Does it make sense? Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions? Because we still have one more extension. The second location, you just have to type in, when you click on extensions, you just have to type cfx lua or redm, and it will show you. And all you have to do is just install. That's it. Right, yeah. It means that they are not being used. You can just delete them, right? If they're not being used, you can just delete them. Okay, so let's go over the other extension, the one I made, which is Vorp, right? Which is the Vorp extension. And let's enable it here. Now we have it enabled, right? So what does this one do and why you need it? Well, just like other frameworks, you have the documentation for Vorp, right? So if I need the export from Vorp core, I would have to come here and copy because I don't know it from memory, right? I do, but some people don't. So I would have to copy it and place it here. Or if you have this extension, you can just start typing core, and you'll see now you have a list here of all the core functions available that you can use. Notifications, you see, server side or client, instance players, get core, the export, webhook, RPC callbacks. I need to change this one. That one is old. The old get core, I need to remove that one too. It's not needed. You know, everything is in here. Not everything, but I'm trying to add more. So all I need to do is just press enter, and the export is now here done. I don't have to memorize everything. All you have to do is just start typing core, and you will get the core functions available for you. Or I can do inventory. Inventory. See, now I have a drop down with many lists. You can use your mouse, and here you can have some information about it. So let's see, I want to add an item, right? And all I do is just click on it. Now it tells me it needs a source, it needs an item, and it needs an amount. And here It's just new because it's a callback. Because if you use it this way, you'll need you could get a return, right? Result equals, which will tell you if it was success or failure, right? When you try to add this item, but for some reason you can't add the item, right? And this means that if you do this, that means this export is synchronous. Synchronous means that when the code is running and it gets here, this line, it can't proceed to the 24th line until this function returns. So it waits, right? But if I want a synchronous one, which Vorp supports, you can do a function here, which is a callback, and now this will become a asynchronous code. So I can go to the 26th line and do my other code, and I don't need to wait for this item to be added to my inventory, right? You also can see here undefined global amount in yellow. That means this is not defined. You would need to define it. A local amount equals 2, right? You see things are gone. So asynchronous can be all the exports from inventory can be ran asynchronous or synchronous, right? You don't need to put a return in that. It will know that the callback doesn't exist, so it doesn't need to wait for a return, right? And more things from inventory can carry item, and it gives you some sort of a snippet. If I press here, you'll see it gives you the whole snippet. So all you need to do is just the amount. A local here can carry in, and it will return if you can. If you can, just and this is a synchronous export, right? Because or you can also do a asynchronous if you do a callback here. If you do, for example, and you move this inside, and you put this can carry in. This one you don't need anymore. And now this is an asynchronous export, right? I can continue my code here while this one is trying to check if you can carry the item. So we understand why Vorp extension is good for, right? We don't have to go to the documentation every time we need something. And I think I have state bags as well. State bag, as soon as you start typing, you can see here state bags for character, right? So let's see, I want a state bag character, right? And now we can choose between first name or the last name or a job or gender or money. All I have to do is just print money. And now we have the state bag with the money. For those that don't know, well, I'm not going to explain what a state bag is, but basically it's a way for you to get information from your character synchronized between client and server very fast, right? So this will print money in the client. Right? I don't have to go to the server. We're gonna go to this point when I start showing the how to use Vorp exports and API, etc. Right? So this would print money, and I didn't have to go to here and click state bags, and now I have to go here and copy, right? Everything is available in here in this workspace, which makes it faster for you to code, right? As you can see here, core is not being used, and that's why it's grayed out, right? I do sleep, yeah, but I sleep whenever I want. time to go to bed. It depends. If I'm inspired, I just stay all night. Right, so we understand what these three extensions is for. Now, there is another one that is very powerful, that is for developers, right? Or for anybody, really, which is called Copilot. Right, so we are going to enable it here. Right, now it's enabled. What is Copilot? Copilot is actually paid. I'm not sure if there is a free version, but this is very useful. Basically, you write code, and it will try to guess what you're trying to do and give you the exact code that you need. As you can see here, he's trying to type calculate days between dates, and he's giving him exactly the code that he needs. Right? This is how powerful it is. Imagine you try to write a translation file, right? And let's say translation equals, that's right. You can see that it already gave me a suggestion for English and PT for Portuguese, right? And all I have to do is just press tab, and now I have it done, right? So let's say I wanted a simple, right? I wanted en here specified, and I will do this. And now I want hello equals hello, right? Bye equals goodbye. Now I'm going here, and I wanted to do Portuguese. I'm going to do PT equals. You see, I don't have to type it. I don't have to know this. The Copilot already knows that hello is olá in Portuguese and bye is adeus in Portuguese, right? And I can go here, and he knows that is in Spanish. He knows that is in French. He knows that is in, where's this, German, something like that, Deutsch. You see, and this is why it's very powerful, GitHub Copilot, because it can guess what you're trying to do. All right, let's go on another example here. Let's say, and other things you can do is also commenting on things you want to do, right? So we are on the server, and I want to get days, months, and year, right? You see, all I had to do is just press enter to go down, and now he's gonna give me a date, day, month, and year. Basically, you type, and he tries to guess what do you want. Does it make sense? Right. Yes, it's not free, but it's if you're developing, if you're trying, like for example, even like configs from Vorp, that everything is in English. You could literally just go below and put translate this to French, and it will give you some. You can, and all you have to do is just press tab, and it will convert it for you. You don't have to actually type anything. Right? But yeah, basically that's what it does. It tries to guess what you're trying to do. And even if I have a snippet over here, like this one, can carry item, I can just go here and do, let's say, check if I can carry item. You see that it gave me the option for it. And I didn't need to go here and copy. All I had to do is just this. And now if I go here and press enter, and it gives me again, yes, that's what I want to do. And you can just, yes, I want to add an item. You see, remove from inventory. Well, it's trying to guess what it's trying to do, but that doesn't mean that it's right. For example, this export doesn't exist. You would have to come here and do sub item, because that's what it exists, as you can see here. So you need to be careful using it because this is an AI copilot, right? It tries to guess what you're doing, what you're trying to do, but that doesn't mean that it knows what you want to, right? And that's why this is a tool for developers, because you wouldn't know that remove item is not the export doesn't exist, right? You wouldn't know unless you go check. So this is why you need to know what you're doing when you're using it, right? So I can remove all this because we don't need. I've explained everything, right? So if you want this extension, all you have to do is just press here, right? Extensions, and then you can search for the extension that you want, right? Let's say Lua, and all of the extensions are here, but the one that you need to use is this one, the first one, right? And all you have to do is just install, and that's it. It's very easy. But remember, this only works if you are working in your workspace. If I open just one file from this folder, it won't work. It right? It needs a trustable workspace. It needs to be trusted. All right. Any questions about these extensions? Guess not, right? Great. So now it works. You probably need oh, you mean Copilot? Yes, it works for HTML, JavaScript, and other languages. Yes, but to work for with JavaScript and HTML, you have other extensions as well that can help you. Like this one is for C++. This one here is Hero Lens. I like it because you can do stuff like this. And it gives you a color. You can do like this to do, and it gives you another color, and you can do stuff like this, or very green. Yeah, I like it because you can add comments throughout your code, and by the colors you can see there's something like you're missing, something you need to do, etc. So you have others for JavaScript, snippets, and Markdown preview. This one here helps you see the Markdown when you're doing readmes, right? Which is something that we missed here. It was to add a README, right? Because we all want to add a README. And now you don't need to go to the folder and create one in there. You can just go here and say new file. I want to create a new file, right? And right here you can do readme.md, which is a markline. That's it, it's created. If you go here, it's right here, right? And now if I type here like this, installation, and then we'll do like this. Now, with that extension, we can go here, and I can see what I'm doing in Markdown. This is how it's going to show when we put it like in GitHub, right? When we go to, let's say here, see, this is how you're gonna see it. You can see it how it's going to be like just by using that extension, right? And on your README, it's a Markdown file. Okay, extensions, we are done with extensions. So let's see how can we best practices, right? When working with CFX and Vorp, right? Because some of the things that CFX has, you can see that it's not part of Lua. That's things that they implement to help us code, right? And one of the things that you see a lot is create. Oh, we are in the wrong file. Is create thread, right? You see this a lot, right? And why do you see this? You see this because this is like a coroutine, right? Creates a coroutine to handle code asynchronously. So this means that if I do this print 1 and I go here print 2 and I go below print 3, when you run this code, it's going to print 1, 3, and then 2, right? Why? Why? Because firstly, this is asynchronous. This is asynchronous code, right? That means that this line of code doesn't need to wait, so we can just skip to line 6, right? So you can skip from 2 to 6, and then this one will print because it's asynchronous. And also this create thread is scheduled. So, and that's why it will print the 3 and then the second first, right? If we remove this, then we will get print 1, right? And print 3. We will get all of these printing synchronously. And that's why people use the create thread, so that you don't block the rest of the script just to run that. Because otherwise, if you did this while true, right? Wait 0, and then you do the rest of the code here. Whatever I have here below, it won't run because it needs, because this while true is a synchronous code, right? It cannot run the rest of the file, and that's why you use a create thread. So I can check this control to then spawn a vehicle, for example, and I can continue my code here with functions, you know, and I can continue for the rest of the script. But these, right? So we understand why create thread is used. When I first started, I was very confused, like, okay, for me to learn how to code or whatever, like I need to understand when to use things, you know, and what to use, and then you will start to understand why do you need create thread and when to use it, right? So knowing what is asynchronous, what is not asynchronous is very important, right? We all understand that. So let's say, right. So, but this is not a Lua thing, right? This is not a Lua thing. This is because CFX provides it, right? In Lua, you would have to create a coroutine. So this is just a function to help you get there, right? Create a coroutine in Lua. So, for example, probably the bot won't know, but I'm trying to make, right, there you go, right? So as you can see, you would have to do a lot of things with this. Anyways, the bot doesn't know, and I'm not gonna bother to do. Right, and there are more things that CFX provides, right? Other things like I think it's the table insert, table.move, table.pack, remove. I believe this is not Lua standard. This is just a library that CFX provides, right? So this would be like, for example, we have a table here, table equals 1, 2, 3, whatever. Right, and I want to add to the table a number 11. So it would add a number 11 to this array, right? If I did table.insert. So these things, and I can remove as well. I want to remove 1 from this array. So you can find these in the CFX documentation, whatever. There's other things like local a equals, which is you can do like JSON.decode or encode. Basically, if you have a code that you want to store in your database, which usually we stored it with strings, right? So we can decode, no, we can encode, right? Some data, encode. We can encode this data, right? Which will basically make it a little bit lighter. And this will print as a string. This will print as a string. And then we can decode what we encoded, right? Which will give us the table actually in Lua, right? And then we can access X and Y. Right, and we use this normally to when we want to save something to on a database, we encode what we want to save, and when we want to get it from the database, we decode it, which it helps, right? Because you cannot store a table on the database, right? You cannot store it like this. It needs to be in a string. So that's what JSON does. You encode and decode, right? And recently I came across another one, which is very useful when you're sending data from server to client or from client to server, because when you do that, you use events, right? And those events, the more data you send, the more slower they will be, and sometimes they can even time you out. And which is the MSG pack, right? So let's say we are on the server side, and we do trigger client event, and we're going to do here outside the name of the event, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can type whatever you want, and we do here, because it needs to go somewhere, you need a source, and then we do here data, right? And then here we do local data equals name and age, right? So imagine we want to send this data to the client, right? So, but this size of code matters, right? The more code you send, the worse it is, the slower it is to get to the client, right? So if you were to write 100 lines in here and send it to client, it will be slower than just 2 lines. So if you want to even if you want to reduce the size, so this is only used when you have a lot of data that you want to send to the client, right? Imagine you have here 100 lines of on this table. So what you would do was local new data, and you would use MSG pack, and you would pack the data. What does it do? Receives any number of arguments, right? Table, whatever. And what this do is that I believe it converts this code into byte 64, which basically shows some weird characters. If you print this data, it will show like weird characters, because it's compressing this data to have less bytes, right? So it will have less byte size, right? to send it to the client. And once you listen to this in your client, which you would do register net event, right, with that name, and you would listen here to function data. This here would print weird characters because you have packed it, right? You have compressed it. So now what you would need to do is local new data, and you would unpack this data. And now when you do the print, you could do print new data.name, and John would show up here, right? So this is used when you have a lot of data to be sent through client to server or from server to client to alleviate the data you're sending, right? To compress so it's not a lot of bytes, because it makes it slower and sometimes makes you time out. That's why sometimes you time out, because the data is being sent through the events were too big for that client. And that's why you would use the MSG pack, right? Right, I just went through some of these stuff that CFX has, right? Some people might not know, or when you should use it, which is very important. That is when you should use it. It's not always. You wouldn't use it for just this table here, right? It's not needed. Other things that CFX provides is a set timeout. Set timeout. There's a lot of things that they provide to make it make your workflow easy, right? What this is an asynchronous function, right? Let's say I would do here print here, print here too, print here too, and here print here 3, right? So if you ran this code, this would print first, then it would go to print here 3, and after 1 second, this one would print. So if I want it after 10 seconds, I'll just put 10 I'll just put here in milliseconds, right? And I would get, this would only print after 10 milliseconds. And that's what the same set timeout does. It's for you to execute code based on the wait time that you want to do, right? If you wanted to do this without this set timeout function, you could do it other ways. For example, create thread, create thread, create thread here, and for example, we would do here wait 10 seconds, and we would print. So that set timeout function would be the same as this, because this is scheduled, right? After 10 seconds, it would print here. Right. There are many other things that CFX provides you for you to work with your scripts, right? Same thing on the server side, you have other things. Right. So let's go to the Vorp side. Let's go to the Vorp side. So we all know, so you make scripts, right? And let's say we want to display anything, really, just like name, whatever, description. Let's say we're going to do this, right? And I want to create a thread, which I want to have a while loop, 0, and I can do here press E. So end. Right. So let's say I want a something that when I press a control on my keyboard, it prints hello Reda, right? We don't need this. And so when you code for Vorp, you would do this. For example, going to a menu. I want to open this menu when I press this key, right? But the issue is that as soon as you join the server, right, you're not going straight to the world, right? You're not going straight to roleplay. You have to go through the character selection, right? So while I'm joining, while I'm in the character selection, why do I need this activated if I'm not near any shop, right? And this is where most of the scripts lack, is that all of these code are running while you don't need it, right? So if I'm on the character selection, I haven't even chosen a character. I don't need to be listening to. I don't need this code to be executed at the moment, right? So in Vorp, what we have two ways of making this block of code here better. So we don't want to run code that at times that we don't need it. So we don't need this code while we are in the character selection. So what we have to do is we have two ways. We can listen to an event, or we can use the state bags that I've recently added to Vorp, right? So to listen to the event, we would do register net event, which is an event that we will listen when the character has been selected. Select. I don't remember the event, so I need to go here, characters, and there we go. All I need to do is this can exist in the server side and on the client. So we would listen for this event here. Function, which provides us a char ID if we need it. We don't need it at the moment, but we will leave it in there. And there is ways that we can do this, right? So there would be this way, for example, has spawn equals false, has spawn equals true, and we could do, for example, this here. If has spawned, then in, right? So this is a way to do it, right? Some of the scripts use this way, but it's still not good enough, right? So when you select a character, this variable here will switch to true, and now after you select the character, you can press this button and something will print, right? But the problem is that you have a statement here, right? You have a statement here being checked for at all frames, 0 frames per second, right? Per millisecond. And so while we are in the character creation, this here is still checking, right? It's being checking this statement if it's true or not. So if it's not true, it doesn't do anything. It goes over and over and over and over while we are at the character creation. And this isn't suitable, right? This is not suitable. So there is this another way we can use. We don't need to use that, right? And we can delete this. We can instead create a function here called anything you want. Press, for example, this function called press. And we can go here and to create thread. And we can call the function right here, like this, press. So now that create thread that we had, which is now a function, right, will only run when we selected the character. So all of this code will not run when we are trying to choose a character, when we are trying to join, right? And this is the most viable thing to do because the code won't run. So, and if the code doesn't run, the player gets a smoother entrance to go to the character selection and do whatever they have to do to then join, right? This is another way to do things. And another way we can do this would be not to use this event, just do create thread. And this is why I like Lua, because you have so much flexibility. Like you can do a block of code in so many ways, right? While in other language you cannot do that as much as you can do in Lua, right? So now we have here the created thread, right? But this is active when we are on the character selection. So for example, so now with state bags, what we can do is repeat until, for example, this is another thing. So we will do a wait, but a very big wait, because we don't need to check it every time, right? 5 seconds, for example, until local player, which is a state bag, right? State.is in session. This is a state bank that Vorp provides. This will return true once you press the prompt to spawn in game, right? So this code here does not run until you press the prompt to joining in game. So this here will not be available, and there is no checks in here, right? As opposite to the first example that we had. This one here is a very good example as well. So every 5 seconds, which is nothing, it will check that the player has chosen his character. When the player has chosen, then now we can run this code and check when you press E to open a menu or to do whatever you need to do, right? But as you can see, by using this local player state in session, the amount of code that we don't need to use, which is the events, right? So we'll just do this. And that's what I started to use since we implemented the state banks. Now, it's very important because for you guys to know that to not run code when you don't need the code, right? The character selection is just one thing, but it's the most important thing because most of the scripts are not listening when the character joins, or are listening for inside these while loops for when the player has joined, and then it needs to keep constantly checking that variable if it's true or false. When you have joined already, you don't need to check it, right? So, and this is why it's the best way to do it is this way or the second example. I like more this example. Um, but yeah, same thing as adding a map, anything, your whole code, if it's not a character selection or a character creation, your whole code basically needs to have this, right? It needs to have this because you don't need to create objects, to create chests, to create whatever because you are on a character selection. There isn't needed at all. It's only needed when you join. So, right. So now we have other things as well. Um, like for example, callbacks, right? From going to the server to client to get to fetch information, you know. So before we had callbacks, we had to use was a trigger. trigger not script event, a server event, for example. And on the server, we would have to go here and do a register net event, and we would have to copy this here so we can register our events, right? Function and right. So, and the way people were doing was that once, let's say, you press this control once you are in game. You press this control and you want to send. You can send anything you want, but in this case, we don't want to send anything. We want to get, right? So before, people would do things like this. For example, repeat, wait 0 until name exists, right? So right now is nil. Local name equals nil, right? So let's say I want to get the player's name. This is just an example. There are better ways to do, right? I want to get the player's name, full name. So this repeat wait here is going to stop the code here until name exists, because right now is nil. So if I wanted to get a name, I would go to the server event. I would go here, and if you're using Vorp core, you would need to, for example, core here, get core. You would need the export, and then we would get here local source of the client that requested the player name, and we'll get here user, right? Many other things that people don't do is to make this check, if not user, then return end, because if this user has dropped while this event is trying to get to the server, you will get an error, right? So it needs to check every time you call for the get user to check if he's not nil, and that's why you see a lot of errors in your server when players drop, is because they don't have this check. So let's say now I want the name, right? So I would do local character equals get used character, which is where the character data is, and I want the name. So I'll get the first name, local surname, which is the last name, right? And now I would send a trigger client event to the source, the same source they asked me, for the name and the surname, right? And then on the client, we would have to do this register net event name, surname. We will have it in here, but we would do, for example, name equals let's put here just the name, just so we don't have name. We can do here first name, the first name and surname, which are now two, right? We assign to this variable. Now this variable is not nil anymore. As soon as this variable is not nil anymore, this this name will be available in here. Now we have the name, right? So this is what before callbacks you would use. You don't have to trigger a server event from server going here to get the data and then coming back here, right? So with Vorp callbacks, you wouldn't need any of this, right? You wouldn't need this. You would need the export, right? You would need the export so that you can have the callbacks available here. And now you would have to get the core. You can easily do callback, and you will see here that you have a drop down callbacks, right? So I want a wait callback, right? That is not the correct one. Call back trigger wait, right? We want this one. We don't need any args. So this is a synchronous callback, so nothing will print here until this one has returned. And we would do here if not result, then end. If it's false, then we get nothing. If it's true, then print result. So then we will go on a server, and we won't need this, right? We can go here and replace this with core dot callback dot register. We register this. We need this one here. And now we need to specify the source, the callback, and any arguments that you send, which we did not send any. So we don't need it. We would delete this one, and we would do callback, and we would send say here local full name. You see, Copilot already know what I want. It would do full name, and now we also need to do here a callback false, right? Because that means that when you use the callback, you need to have a return somewhere, right? It needs to return to the client to finish it. So this is an example to get the full name using callbacks, right? So we eliminate all of that code, and once this returns, it checks if it's not false. If it is true, or there's a data in it, it will print here the name. And that's how you use callbacks. Very easy to use. Now, we are trying to get a name, which is something that it's not important, right? Nobody can exploit a name, right? So if you use statebags, you don't need any of this. You can delete all this. You can delete all this and just do local first name equals local play.state. You have to say character, and here you would do first name, and then here would do local surname, the character, first line name, and now you would print your name is first name, surname. So this is the power of statebags, right? The client knows that this is your name and this is your last name. I do not need a server anymore. And you see how much you reduced in code? I can have my name and just right here. Because as soon as you choose a character in Vorp core, it will assign to the statebags your first name, your last name, the money, and whatever. So I would say if you have to use if you have to display your name or to display money, for example, look up player.state character character.money. You can also have the money you can see here in the core state bags which ones are available. For example, the group, the gold, role, description, gender, job, job label. So all of this information, just like this one, is available in the client or server, right? You don't need to call the export to get your name, right? If you have a register, if you have a source available, register not event, keeps giving you this ESX shit. Fun, right? Local source. So as long as you have a source, you can do local name, for example, and you do player, which is available. Player, which is the source, right? And you would do state dot character dot first name. So this local player here is an alias for player. This is the source. So as long as you put the source here, it will get the first name or last name from the course. So just by doing this, you are not invoking any export. You are not invoking functions from Vorp core, and same thing on the client. So this is the most optimized way for you to do things, right? So let's say you have money here, right? You're trying to buy something. When you're trying to buy something, you're not advised to use this. You're not advised to use this. These state bags are only for you to display or carry information for you, right? They are not made for you to do crucial checks, like if you have money, if you have gold enough, if this is your job, if this is if you are an admin. Those are not used for those checks. Though those checks need to be made using the core functions, right, to check if you have the job or not. But they can spare you making client events to server to see if you have money, to see if you have the job. For example, if I wanted to buy here something on press, and I want to say, okay, before I do a triggered event to check if I actually have money to buy something, I can use the state bag and say say like local price equals 100, right? So if money equals or is more than price, right? Then I can use the event to go to the server and then check again if I actually have the money and then buy. But if I don't have the money using here, then there is no need for me to go to the server, right? Because I've already checked it. You don't have the money. But to buy something, you always need to go to the server because that's where the security is done, right? Because client can be cheated. So, and this is the best way you can do to optimize your scripts, because there are things that you don't need to do if you use the correct ways, like this state bag, checking if you have money before you go there, or to get a name of a player, and same thing for groups, same thing for jobs, right? And then here you would call for the export, right? Local core equals export dot for core, okay, core, and then in here you would do local user equals user. If not user, then return. And local money equals char money, right? This is how you would get char. And now here local price equals 100. And now we would do this, right? So this is how you should have done, right? to check properly that the character has met, because this is just server side. Nobody can modify this, right? And even though you prevented here because I didn't have money at the time, so there is no need for me to go and check again, right? If I actually have money in the state bag, then I go to the server before I buy something. I check through here if I actually have the money, right? Right, so using the proper functions, state bags that we offer, or CFX, you can reduce a lot of the code and have actually proper implementations, right? There's, for example, Vorp has a lot of old code, right? It's not easy just to go there and change everything, because it requires to change the whole script. I've been doing to some other scripts, um, but yeah, this is what you would do to reduce code, and there's more things in here, right? Um, but this, but there's a lot of ways for you to use Vorp in Lua, especially, and state bags really help. Yeah, so we'll be putting this on a video. I'm actually recording here, so this will be available in a video. But yeah, you've learned the callbacks, state bags, which they are very powerful. They reduce a lot of the code, and you've learned that you should not be running code when you don't need it. Same thing as, for example, you're trying to open a menu, right? If this here was to open a menu, you could assign a variable here, for example, local is in menu equals false, and we could do here, not this. When I press is in menu equals true, I'm in the menu, right? And you would open the menu, open menu, and you would open the menu here. You could do like this, for example. It's not available because you put it, and it needs to be outside so that it can be available inside this function. And then in here you could do if not is in menu, then end. Right, so, and then somewhere along this line you would close the menu, and it would do is in menu false. So what does this do? This allows to, for example, I got to the location, I've pressed this button, the menu is open, I set it that I'm in the menu, so we block this button to be pressed again, or a location to be checked, because I've got to the menu. There is no need for me to be checking to press the control again when I have the menu open, or when I'm at the shop, right? I have found the shop. There is no need for me to be checking at the distance if I'm there or not. And that's why this is useful. I'm in the menu, so I set it and I'm in the menu, and we stop the execution of this code, right? And another thing we can do here, which is very crucial, is adding a sleep thread here, right? So let's say if you're not in the menu, we're going to wait here for 1,000 milliseconds, right? So this will run every 1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, because you're not in the menu, right? So, but local sleep equals 0, but to this control press, it needs to be run all frames so that it can detect it when you press it, right? So right now we are not in the menu. This code here is running at all frames to check when you press the menu. As soon as you press, this variable will change to state to true, and now this code won't be running anymore, and the sleep is 1,000. So now this code here is checking if you are outside of the menu every 1 second. And this is how you optimize your code, is using sleep threads, because I don't need to run these all frames when I don't need to. I need to run it when this one is false. Then I need to set my sleep to check this control is available when I press. Does it make sense? Yes, you just need to do that in the client side. And then if you actually want to really check or perform an action like open a menu, which is very important, you go then to the server and you actually check that the player has the job. No, local sleep is to control the thread, right? You remember that before we didn't have the sleep here, the wait was 0. So this whole code was, so it was checking if I'm not in the menu every millisecond, right? When we add a sleep to it, is to control it. So we know I'm in the menu, right? So there is no need to run this every frame to check if I'm in the menu or not. So we add a sleep to a 1 second. So we are going to check this every 1 second. When we close the menu, then this will turn into false. And now we're going to use this sleep. Because road runs from top to bottom. So sleep here is 10 now, but the next time it passes here, it will be 0. So you understand what I mean? So this is to control the thread. It's not to control how long the menu is open. This is just an example here. You will have a function here when the menu is closed, for example, and that's when you set up this. It's just a way for you to control the thread, because when you run a thread at 0 milliseconds, that is what when you are in game and you look at your F8 to the resman and you see your script going very high, because the more checks you have here, the slower, right? The more resman your script will have, right? Which is bad. So adding a sleep controls your thread and makes your script lighter. And this is why when you see like scripts that are so big and they are so light, is because all the threads are controlled. For example, I could have 8 of this, and I'm saying I'm in the menu, so I'm going to lock all of the 8 threads because I don't need them. I'm in a menu. I don't need to be in other locations to be checking if I'm there because I'm here. And that's how you optimize your script. Yes, it's just an example, because when you have to press the button, it needs to be run at 0 frames per second. So that's why we switch from 1,000 to 0. But there are other examples, right? This is just because this one is needed, right? There are other things that you could use this one for. You know, you don't need to have a control sleeper. There are other ways to. Not everything that you need to check needs to be at 0 frames per second. That's what I'm trying to mean. In this case, we need it. But when we are inside the menu, or when we are doing something like in the shop or whatever, there's no need to be running every frame, because we don't need to detect when player presses the button, because we are in the menu. When you close the menu, it will detect. We switch to false. Now we go back to 0. And usually you would have here something like distance, right? You would have here distance between player and the shop, and you would do if distance, for example, and you would do a draw text or something from a prompt, right? Or whatever. And then in here you would do sleep equals 0, because we only need it when you are within this distance. So if you are far away, we don't need to check every frame for you to press the button. So we wait one